Hey guys, how's it going? It's Kire here with another Infinite Magicraid video, and in today's video we're going to be talking about Nid Rold. He is easily one of the best characters in the game. I'm thinking he's like a top 4 legendary. He's right up there with Hizonia. I would say you got Catherine, you got Nicholas, and then you got Hizonia and Nid Rold as kind of the top tier legendaries in this game. So, and I figured it would be a good time to talk about him because we have this Miracle Wish going on and he's one of the choices. So I've already had him pulled, but I was trying to get another copy of him, because he only gets better with the more exclusives you have. Every single one of his exclusives is an absolute banger, but at E0, he's still better as a damage dealer, especially in Guild Boss, than most damage dealers are at E2, E3. Like he's just absurd when it comes to that. Just probably due to how well he scales with other buffs and other champions. And we'll get into that here in a bit. But let's break him down really quick so you can understand why he ended up getting so good. So we got Force Mark, Attacker here, and he applies bleed off his auto attack. It has a pretty good chance, 40% chance. It ends up going to a 60% chance. That's a pretty high percentage chance for his auto attack. So you can get 2 there. A2, so he's actually a pretty underrated nuker, especially once you get him exclusive 1. You can't really be a good nuker. A lot of times I just turn this move off if it's Guild Boss, for example, but this is where you can actually start using him in Arena. Maybe Dungeons a little bit better, even though he's already good at Dungeons at exclusive 0. 230% attack damage to all enemies. The damage of this attack increases by 10% for every layer of bleed the target has, up to 50%. And then on a 3-turn cooldown, but at exclusive 1, then Nid Rold additionally casts Sword Mastery 1 time after casting it for every 1 enemy under bleed status. So if you pair him with another character that has an AoE bleed, like Natalie, for example, he can come down and cast this multiple times. It's probably the hardest hitting move in the game, because he has one of the best passives in the game, which is this, the best damage dealing passive, because 80% of the damage he deals is considered bleed damage. That alone right there, look at that as 80% of the damage he's dealing is ignoring defense, which is already hilarious. But then not only that, it's affected by mastery. It just can't land a crit, which is totally fine in my opinion, because if you look at the damage, I'll take that trade-off any day of the week, because it's just such a massive thing to be able to ignore 80% of the defense and have it considered as bleed damage. Then he also gains bonus bleed damage. Consider this basically just a massive straight up modifier that he does more damage. So not only does he get to ignore 80% of defense, he gets just an extra modifier of his actual damage there. That goes up from, instead of 15, when you have a booked, it is 27%. 18, 21, 24, 27% right there. And then lastly, he has this ult right here. This is amazing on single target. So once you finally get to the boss at the end of the dungeon, mainly Guild Boss, it's going to hit all 5 of those times right on that boss. It's not going to just hit 1 time because there's only 1 target. It actually hits that same person over randomly hits him 5 times. And then when you have him exclusive 3, it's randomly going to hit that target 8 times, which is just, I think that's probably the hardest nuking move in the entire game when you factor in that he's getting the extra boost to his bleed damage. 80% of it's considered bleed damage, and is also getting affected by mastery. So amazing damage dealing character. What's cool about him is the competition that he has when it comes to that slot as a single target damage dealer is HP Burn. And the benefit of him is bleed damage is affected by attack. He can also stack up as much attack and mastery as possible, whereas the HP burner is usually handicapped by needing to build a ton of HP and mastery. Those are the only 2 things that affects it, but it's mainly stuck on being affected by the enemies at max HP. And then when that gets too high, then it gets capped by their own max HP up to 30% of it, which is a problem for them. And then I think that's where he starts to scale. Also, because he is a bleeder, he can land up to 10 stacks, whereas HP burners can only land up to 5. So things like Ben Austin being able to call him in get hard capped, because a lot of them can end up just applying basically 5 stacks all by themselves. They're not actually getting to the point where maybe they could apply 6 or 7, but they can't because they're limited to only applying 5 just due to the nature of HP burn. Whereas he can apply 10. And then the snowball there of applying 10 actually scales up pretty considerably because of how the bleed passive works, where the damage by right here, the 30, 50, 70, it goes all the way up to 165% of the attacker's attack as bleed if it's at that maximum rate. So he's getting so many additional modifiers. He's ignoring defense. It's all bleed damage. He's getting additional bleed damage, and he scales with attack boosts, unlike HP burners. He can go up to 10 stacks, unlike HP burners. And that all combines into being easily one of the best damage dealers, but scales with other characters. Like you can actually give him synergy. Whereas I feel like HP burners like Melia, for example, are just like a plug and play character. You just throw this character in and it doesn't really matter who she's with. She's just going to do good damage. She has the counterattack. She can apply 5 HP burns by herself. Doesn't need really anyone else to get her there. She's going to be able to do it. Whereas Nid Rold does really good damage, but if you bring in the right characters, he's going to do like exponentially more damage because you're going to be able to, like, I think a lot of people were initially doing like multiple bleed characters. Like you would have him plus his Aro or something like that. And I still think that's good, don't get me wrong, but he can apply all the bleeds himself. And sometimes when you have a character like this and another character, those bleeds stack and then they can kind of overlap. And then the character that does the less damage is going to be taking away from his potential bleeds that are doing more damage. So him by himself being able to apply 10 bleeds with a Ben Austin means that he can stack up to 10. You get the maximum capability of those bleed stacks by being able to pair with him. Also, because of the nature of how bleed works in his kit, he pairs really well with people that can boost up his attack by 40%. So not only does he do really good damage by himself, but he has way more scaling potential because of how well he synergizes with characters that are already really good in Ben Austin and in Slivelle here. So whereas, for example, on the flip side of that would be like Melia, she's already applying 5 HP burns by herself. You bring in him, and yes, she gets called in a ton, but she's already applied all 5 HP burns. So you don't see that massive upswing in a damage dealer that you would in a Nid Rold. So we're going to go through here and take a look. We're going to go to Guild Boss first. And this is my current team. You can kind of see exactly the difference between the two damage dealers here. Just in I think, a pretty fair testing environment. We have the exclusive 3 Ben Austin. We have an exclusive 1 version of Melia versus an exclusive 0 Nid Rold. I do want to put Dragon Eyes into this guy, but I'm waiting. I want to show you guys just how good he is. Just an exclusive 0 versus, you know, having an exclusive 3 version. And it's really hard to kind of gauge on how good he is. Also, to give you an idea, here's his stats. This is what we're working with. We have 32k attack, 53 effect hit, and then mastery wise, we have 146.3%, and then the aura is 24% additionally. When his HPs are there 50%. The reason why I can get away with so little effect hit is because of Nicholas. He is dropping the effect res by 50%. Ideally, I would have this way higher, but because I have stand in here, that is what's happening. Also, I really like standing here because of the speed up. It's going to make Ben Austin go more and potentially lap the boss, which just means getting called in. Like everyone gets called in more. So it's just, it all works out pretty well in my opinion. So here, let's do this. And I'm probably not going to show the whole thing. I'll just skip to the end. But this is just kind of how he works. You can kind of get an idea. I like seeing the actual numbers here because I do want to also show other sections of the game where I think he's going to be really good in, because I think the only thing that he potentially struggles in is going to be arena. And when you have an exclusive 1, he's actually a really good nuker. So you can really use him there too, especially if you don't have that many characters. He's like the main damage that you got. You're going to have a character that's going to be really good pretty much everywhere. So here it is. Basically what I do is I turn off his A2. He's just constantly hitting his A1, and notice how he gets called in. And then I just want to show how many bleeds you can kind of expect for him to have. We got 9 right here. And then Ben Austin takes anyone in. So he has 10 just by himself. And then let's see how consistently we can get 10. Looks like we're right back to 10 after the counterattack. And I just want to constantly show this just so you can get an idea of the numbers we're looking at with that particular gear. See if there's anything else worth mentioning. Pretty much like the reason why I like him too is just because of how he has that he's infinitely scaling basically with the attack up, with being able to be called in, the 10 bleeds by himself. Like all those things lead to him constantly doing a ton of damage. There's really no like these artificial caps that happens. Also at Guild Boss 6, they end up putting a HP reduction, like a max HP reduction, which is really going to affect HP burners damage output, because their max HP is going to be affected by how much HP they're actually doing. So that's going to be a big problem for them. Whereas the bleeders don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to cut to the end of this, and then we're going to show the difference in the damage here. Then I'm going to add in an attack up so you can see just how much his damage increases when he has an attack up too. Okay, so we're looking at 130 million. And then look at the difference between Nid Rold and Melia. She's one of the top tier damage dealers. I've seen Nid Rolds, like when it comes to this, usually people have been doing this kind of comp of these 3 supports on the left and then they'll have either a Lucifer, a Zanya, or a Melia in the place of that second DPSer. And Nid Rold is consistently outperforming all of those characters at varying levels of exclusive. So to give you an idea, I really think Nid Rold is like absolutely top tier, the best single target damage dealer in the game. And then you have those other characters that come up as like varying levels of second to fifth place. So already super good, but I also wanted to show you guys what happens when you add an attack up 2 to this guy, because the damage goes to the moon. So here we'll change this. I'll put in Slivelle, and then I'll start it off for a bit, and then we'll skip to the end just like I did previously. And then I also think I probably should get some more attack or effect hit for him, because I was seeing some resist even with the 50% reduction. It would just be nice to get more. You know, like, he's a character that just needs all the stats. Like, it obviously except crit rate and crit damage, which is nice. So when you can focus in on the stats, it makes it a lot easier to focus in on those. But there's really no limit of like speed, attack, effect hit than you'd really be looking for. But other characters like this make it significantly easier to be able to hit those requirements. And that's why I like characters like Slivelle, like Nid Rold, that really let you focus in on certain things. Like Slivelle, you don't have to worry about effect hit, you don't have to worry about crit rate. All you got to do is just a ton of speed, ton of attack, and a ton of crit damage. So I really like that about her as a character as well. It's kind of similar. And here's another example of being able to have those 10 stacks. As you can see, it also falls off after the counterattack, but he should be able to build him up. Yeah, we got him built right back up to 10 before he ends up going. That's another benefit of having so much speed on the people calling it in. You have the speed up on Nicholas. You can probably do something a little differently. Maybe like a Luna with the turn meter increase. She also has the attack down 2, the attack up 2. So you have a lot of benefits there with other characters. You don't necessarily need this like seasonal character to be able to do this. It's just a nice combination because he has this busted like Christmas package passive that's increasing his damage. So it does fall a bit. I'm not sure if that's due to just timing of the abilities or if that's due to me not having enough effect hit. I need to watch a little bit more closely, but he's right back up to 10 there. So I think there's definitely going to be dips into him falling off, but I think that is way worth the trade-off than having 2 bleeders and having that bleeder take up a lot of his burn or bleed damage. Because I see that a lot with people having Melia and Hizania, and then that one of them is taking up that HP burn damage. And so if you removed one, you'd probably do very similar damage. Same thing with bleeders. There is a benefit to having another bleeder too if you have like bleed detonation on there where it like hits up to 6 of them. So if you have that going off enough, then it might be worth it, but that's a whole different comp than what I'm trying to do here. Slivelle definitely brings it too. I think she's an amazing character in her own right. She's also on the banner, so I'm a big fan of her. So if you end up pulling her, I wouldn't feel bad. I just would only recommend building her if you already have other direct damage dealers, like if you have a Lucifer, maybe a Zia. People are going to be getting Zia on the next month's banner anyway, so that's going to be another thing worth considering. But I would definitely take a Nid Rold over Slivelle any day. I'd probably take Nid Rold over Melia at this point, which sounds crazy. Like pretty much until recently, I would have thought it was a no-brainer to go Melia over Nid Rold, but Nid Rold's just too good, in my opinion, ever since I changed him. I forget what he used to do before the change, though. I just noticed the change, and he's insane. So this is actually more damage this run than the one with Melia. I don't like when it comes to this guy. I think it's because of my effect hit. You know, it's kind of random on. You know, like there's a little variance in how the runs go. There you go, 141 million, and look at that. So the difference between him having an attack up 2 and not increased him by 30 million damage. Like just that alone, that one change increased him by 38 million damage. So I think that really goes to show just how good this character is, because imagine if you build a team comp where you had the combination of all of it. You can fit in the attack up, you can fit in an HP burner, and then other stuff such as Ben Austin. Because I think the real thing that matters the most, if I had to guess, it's definitely the Ben Austin. Like he's the big MVP when it comes to pairing with Nid Rold, because you need to have that call in. Because what would happen is if you don't have Ben Austin, then he's not going to stack up his bleeds nearly as much as he's doing right now. So now let's actually take a look at some dungeons and see how good he is there. Basically, he brings the same thing that you would to any of these dungeons. Rum, he's definitely going to be a little better because the dot damage is increased. That's just a passive of this boss here. So let's actually just run team comp here. It's kind of nice. Also, another thing, I'm not here yet, but I have seen on stages 31 and above, they increase the bleed damage. Like there's a modifier there to make it to where they're increasing bleed and they're also increasing burn. I don't know the specifics of how they increase it because I'm not, past 30 on any of these, but it is kind of encouraging to know. It's almost like they made the character that's better than the HP burners standard, but then it seems like they wanted to change it where they thought HP burn was too strong, but they have a character here in Nid Rold that kind of slipped through the cracks. So he's already just as good, if not better than all the HP burners. And then he gets extra buffs because they're trying to buff bleed and HP burn to match it, or they're trying to buff bleed and burn to match HP burn. But he's already just as good. So he gets all the benefits that they would normally get additionally while being just as good as them. So I think that's pretty sick. So here's a run with Rum. Let's just kind of show this off and see. You can kind of get an idea of how good his damage is here. I think Ben Austin super good for the dungeons. For example, I thought Ben Austin was going to be bad in dungeons, but I've been really liking him a lot when you get him with a ton of effect hits. So right now I have him with a lot of speed because of Guild Boss, but I think a dungeon version of him would have a ton of effect hit, and it makes it way more consistent. It's not always, but it makes this so much consistent. So I like to consider this as like a silence to the enemies because yes, they hit really hard, but it's their second and third moves that hit really hard. So it's on a 3-turn cooldown. He's CCing all of them, then giving himself turn meter and bringing everyone into attack with King's Majesty. If it kills someone, it goes on cooldown, but if it doesn't, he's just going to be bringing in Nid Rold with his inspiring attack here, and Nid Rold hits like an absolute truck, so him going multiple times every single turn is insane. So he brings the CC and he brings in his hardest hitting damage dealer constantly. So you'll see just how hard that was his A2 and then his A1. Like he hits super hard for this just all the time, which is nice because he's on the boss doing just as much damage, but then he's shredding the waves, whereas HP burners can't do this. HP burners, it takes a long time and it's not proactive. His damage is proactive, where he's constantly just his auto attack. You don't need to wait for bleeds to pop off. Like look at, he's shredding these people. Like this is something that Melia, his Onya can do this with E1 and then on a nuke, but can't do this at all on like constantly, like for example on waves that are harder, or when he doesn't have his A3. And so you kind of need to have like a focus to reset it, whereas he doesn't have to worry about that at all. So I'm doing this just to make sure this run is consistent, but ideally you'd want to be able to do this without needing to target someone, but it should be fine regardless. So here it is, and then now you'll get an idea of his damage on a boss, but he's going to absolutely shred this guy. So I think he has like both wins. He has the HP burn damage, but then he also cleans the waves super fast. I think it also is kind of encouraging to see that there's a character that's just as good as HP burners that's not an HP burner. Like yes, usually what it is you kind of have to worry that you pulled an HP burner and then go from there. Whereas with him, you don't have to do that. So I like that a lot. And then he's such an outlier to bleeders because any other bleeders wouldn't be able to do this. It wouldn't even be close. So keep that in mind. Like bleed is not good. It's Nid Rold is good because of his passive, and then he just so happens to apply bleed is the way I like to look at him as a character. And all of this same thing is going to apply in other game modes as well. The only weakness, in my opinion, is going to be Arena. Until you get him E1, then I think he is a very good nuker, if not one of the best on his A2. So that's pretty much the biggest showcase I can think of. Like, I don't want to just keep running through content because it's pretty redundant at this point. I think he's great in Force Mark. He's going to do the same stuff there that he was here, in my opinion. Reason he might not necessarily be good here because his A3, even though it's randomly targeted, it still heals. It's considered an AoE that's going to be healing the boss, so that's why I don't have him in this team here. But in every other encounter, yeah, I think he's amazing. That's going to do it for the showcase here on Nid Rold. Let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And with that, guys, I'm out of here. Peace.